Hello everyone. As many of you may remember, back in October, there was a based and red-pilled speech by the Black Equalities and Women's Minister for the Tory party. So let's have a quick look at what she said again.
What we are against is the teaching of contested political ideas as if they are accepted facts. We don't do this with communism, we don't do this with socialism, we don't do it with capitalism. And I want to speak about a dangerous trend in race relations that has come far too close to home to my life, and it is the promotion of critical race theory, an ideology that sees my blackness as victimhood and their whiteness as oppression. I want to be absolutely clear. This government stands unequivocally against critical race theory.
Ah yes, this was indeed very based and red-pilled. I can get behind everything she is saying there. However, the problem with the Tory party is that they have a lot of words for the right wing. They essentially do virtue signal every now and then right wing, and then don't actually do anything about it, and in fact do start leaning towards the left. We see it with climate change, which ends up meaning that they can't build more houses. We see it with immigration, where recently Priti Patel signed a deal with the French to stop illegal migrants crossing the Channel, while at the same time allowing 3 million Hong Kongers to just be able to have full UK citizenship and move here if they want to. Not that I'm saying we shouldn't do anything about Hong Kong, it's clearly in a bad way, but allowing 3 million of them to just move over to the UK? Yeah, I don't know about that. But I'll try and stay on topic here. The Women and Equalities Minister then goes on to denigrate Black Lives Matter for being the anti-capitalist socialist movement that it is. So having that so open and coming from a black MP who is in charge of this sort of shit, yeah, I could see the positives of it, don't get me wrong. But I was glad that I didn't make a video on it because I know when it comes to the Tory party, action means a lot more than words, and their actions are all, of course, left-leaning. As it came out in the news a few days ago, that the History GCSE is to be given a Black Lives Matter makeover, and it could lead to popular topics such as World War II and the Tudors, including more content on ethnic minorities. You know, those times in history where ethnic minorities were bloody everywhere, you know, the Tudor times, everyone was black. Anne Boleyn, according to BBC's docudramas, she was black. History GCSE is set to be given a Black Lives Matter makeover, which could lead to popular topics such as World War II and the Tudors, including more content on ethnic minorities, the Telegraph can reveal. Exam boards have been in discussions with a coalition of charities since this summer about updating their courses to include more black history. Well, which charities are these? Please don't hide behind a coalition of charities. Come on, tell me what they are. Dr. Catherine Byrne, an Associate Professor of Education at Oxford University, of course it's Oxford, and Deputy President of the Historical Association, said that a concerted effort is now underway to overhaul the syllabus. Does it need that? Read Abolition of Britain and you will know that we already had an overhaul of the history GCSEs, or O-levels in those days, by a bunch of Marxists. And guess what? All we bloody learn about now in the Victorian times is the diet of a chimney sweep, how bad we treated criminals, and how a load of us moved to Australia. Absolutely nothing on the political situation of the time, absolutely nothing about the empire apart from the fact that we had a Bengal famine, and absolutely nothing about Queen Victoria, basically, just that she married Prince Albert. And that was it. So while I agree that we need an overhaul on the history GCSE, this is not the way that I wanted it going. This is going further in the direction that is making us all idiots in the UK. We are looking particularly at the most commonly taught courses within history GCSE and thinking about if this is the diet that most students get, where there is a scope to make changes, she said. What could we add to those existing units as small changes with the proviso that if you put something in, you do have to take some things out? So, not only are they going to add, you know, Black Lives Matter history, which I guess we can call alternate history, they're going to have to take out real history instead, which is very interesting. She said that there is no doubt that the Black Lives Matter movement spurred on the discussions, but added that there was already considerable appetite among historians to make changes. Yes, of course there were, because a bunch of them are Marxists. This is why recently the government started saying, look, schools can't use things that are blatantly anti-capitalist, because school curriculum is already so bloody one-sided. There have been some frustration among exam boards that when they offer new courses, such as the history of migration, schools fail to take them up in large numbers, since this would involve investing in new textbooks and teacher training, Dr. Burns said. She explained that the preferred approach is to amend the content of existing popular courses, which means they are more likely to be taught in schools in a widespread way. We know Nazi Germany is the bog standard that everyone will do, Dr. Burns said. So what, you're going to take out Churchill's speech and adding in that, oh, did you know that a lot of black people moved to the country after World War II instead? Like, come on, what are you taking out? With this topic, pupils could be taught about the black population of Germany at the time and how they got caught up in the Holocaust and the promotion of the Aryan identity, she added. fuck the Jews. You know, Holocaust wasn't about killing Jews. You know, it was also about killing black people. You know, the 10 black people in Germany were also affected by this. Not the 6 million Jews. Jesus Christ. I want to make this painfully clear to YouTube, by the way. I am joking and imprinting her position. I am mocking her position. Okay, this isn't my position. I think that the Holocaust was very, very bad. I do think it happened, and I do think a lot of Jews were killed in it. You just can't be too careful these days, because YouTube will probably hear that bit and then try and get rid of my video. But just to be clear, again, YouTube, I am mocking her position. Right, back to the article. Likewise, a course on the Tudors could include learning about John Blank, a black trumpeter who was a member of the court for both Henry VII and Henry VIII, she said. Oh, bloody hell. Because it's important to know that he had one black trumpeter. You know, fucking hell, the Tudors had one exotic trumpeter. Who gives a shit? A report published by the Royal Historical Society in 2018 said that teachers must stop devoting so much time to slavery because it puts black children off history. Does it? The Society has found that the seemingly relentless focus on the exploitation and abolition of slavery can be intellectually limiting and at times alienating for black pupils. I think that really puts a low expectation on black pupils, I have to say. I don't think black pupils are put off by the fact that they learn real history. I think the problem is that the only thing they learn about the empire is slavery, when the empire did a hell of a lot more than just comply with slavery for a bit and then completely abolish it in the Atlantic. But also, they're basically saying that, oh, if black people learn that there was one black trumpeter in Tudor times, they're going to be really into history then. They're going to love knowing what more things black people did for the next few centuries in England and the rest of the UK and the Empire. I mean, come on, do you really think that focusing less on slavery and more on one black trumpeter from Tudor times and knowing that black people were affected by the Holocaust is really going to get black people more interested in history? Come off it, man. People just want to learn objective history. They don't want this bullshit pandering for Black Lives Matter. Come on. Right, let's finish this bullshit article. Aside from slavery, the history of British black and minority ethnic communities are often absent from the classroom, the report said. That's because they only became like a huge thing after World War II. And most of our history is between, you know, literally the Normans and World War II. You know, we stopped really teaching history after World War II. We do a bit about the Cold War, but believe it or fucking not, that was quite a big issue that I think we should be taught about, rather than the issues of British black and ethnic minorities, especially when it comes to GCSE. I mean, if you really want to know about that, fine, have it as an option, I don't care. But if you're really going to take away from the Cold War and the Jewish victims of the Holocaust to focus more on black people in history? Like, come on. I know your priorities are put black people on a pedestal, but I just don't think that's a very sensible thing to do. It's about British history, alright? And I know you keep saying black history is British history, but again, that's only really true after the Windrush. And even then, it's not really true. In order to foster a more inclusive environment for black students, teachers must go beyond these limited vantage points, it added. Dr. Byrne added that making changes to GCSE are absolutely aimed at encouraging more BME students to take history. Do we take out the A of that now? The RHS is one of a number of organisations, including the Historical Association, the Institute of Historical Research, and the School History Project, and the Runnymede Trust, which have been in discussions with all the UK's major exam boards about this since the summer. So, I mean, if this doesn't show how far we've fallen, I don't know what will. It seems that most charities looking at the history syllabus these days are all subverted by Black Lives Matter. I just hope to God that the Tories actually do something about this, but if they've allowed it to go this far, where they're already talking about changing the syllabus, I can't see them stopping it. Here's a slight white pill for the end. Any amendments to exam content would need to be approved by both the Department for Education and the regulator Ofqual. So hopefully the Department for Education will just stop this. I mean, it's full of civil servants who probably agree with all of this, but hopefully the MP can veto it or something. I'm not exactly sure how these exam boards are all dealt with by the Department of Education, but hopefully they don't approve it. A spokesman for the AQA, the country's biggest exam board, said, "We're always looking at how we can make our qualifications as representative as they can possibly be." Representative of what? What do you mean by representative? Come on, don't give me that. A spokesperson for Pearson, which owns the exam board EdXL, said, "While we always work hard to design history qualifications that are diverse and inclusive, fucking why? This year has rightly generated a renewed focus on what history is taught to our young people, and the sector needs to keep challenging itself." So great. So we have every historical charity, well, school historical charity in the UK backing this. We have the two biggest exam boards in the UK backing this. And it seems that the only thing that is going to stop this is Ofqual and the Department for Education, which, I'm not being funny, I can't see them stopping this either. So not only have we had history being taught fucking awfully in this country for years, but now they're going to make it worse. They're literally changing how we see the Holocaust. I mean, that is something I wouldn't expect from anyone apart from Wignat. But no, they're focusing away from the Jewish tragedy in the name of Black Lives Matter. I cannot believe this. This is literally clown world. So if you didn't think this was bad enough, BBC News put out a small interview they had with the three founders of Black Lives Matter, and I can't describe this video as anything but insidious, so let's have a look.
Hi, my love.
Hey. Hey.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Alicia. Hi, can you hear me?
I love how they call it the anti-racist movement. You know, it's just a movement. You know, we only saw fires in 2 of those past pictures. It's not like there hasn't been widespread rioting due to these people in the US. Oh, but we're 93% peaceful? Fucking hell, if you think that's, like, impressively peaceful, then you need your head checking. There's no other way of putting it. I mean, if you've been following this channel, you'll know Black Lives Matter started with the killing of Trayvon Martin, but I just love the way that they frame social media here.
I wanted to hear what we were thinking, and so I saw Alicia write a love note to Black folks, and she closed that note off with Black Lives Matter. And I put a hashtag in front of it. I was like, we about to make this thing go viral. I believe that the role of social media democratizes voices, especially Black women voices.
I mean, I'd agree that social media democratizes voices if Twitter and Facebook didn't constantly ban people. I mean, do we remember the mass banning of Alex Jones? How is that a democratized voice? A lot of people want to hear him. He managed to get quite a lot of people out for the MAGA march in America. Yet social media is nowhere to be found. And I do agree, Black women do seem to be the least affected, despite some of the, quite frankly, openly racist crap that I've seen from Black women's profiles on Twitter and the like. No, I'm not surprised at all why they're following. I know that most people in the world, for some reason, are complete idiots, follow their intuition, and don't at all look at any type of facts from any events. Hence, as we went through before, there is talks of changing the focus of the Holocaust from Jewish victims to Black victims in UK GCSEs.
I'm really encouraged by what we've been witnessing over the last 6-7 months now. And I'm just excited and heartened that people have joined in the movement. You know, we started this back in 2013, and we're seeing 7 years later that we've now grown to what is now being heralded as the largest movement in history.
You know,
Ugh, social media was a mistake. Honestly, I'm not being funny. This whole movement is just based on one massive Mandela effect. And the fact that social media is, you know, suppressing dissenting voices against this narrative doesn't help with dispelling the Mandela effect. You can say he wasn't jogging all you want, atheism is unstoppable, it won't get you back to YouTube, dispelling this Mandela effect.
one of the things that I think this movement has done really well is it has been cautious about valuing symbol over substance.
Yeah, all right. I'm sorry, but the amount of bloody posters I've seen and murals of George Floyd and turning him into a saint. And try and tell me that you have more substance than symbolism. Black Lives Matter is nothing but symbolism. Your movement has absolutely no substance whatsoever. Or your narratives are easily dispelled. The only reason you are popular is because these dispelling facts never quite make it to the mainstream because of social media and because the mainstream media seems to avoid using any type of fact.
From what we know, our movement essentially emerged under the administration of the first Black president, who we all hoped, right, was going to be a special advocate, right, for Black communities who've been left out and left behind. And what we found, right, was that that wasn't always the truth. And so, what this movement has been able to do in relationship to representation is really to count on us to make sure that there is substance to those symbols.
So, for some goddamn reason, you then decided to choose George Floyd over President Barack Obama. I mean, are you out of your mind? I mean, don't get me wrong. I know that Barack Obama didn't do exactly what you wanted, but George Floyd was only really good for your narrative in the first few hours after he died. As soon as that toxicology report came out, and it showed that there was no asphyxiation and no actual damage to his throat, kind of threw your whole narrative out the window, but you keep going with it anyway. To the point where resources for homeschooling in the UK are fully behind that narrative. For those of you that don't know, I did a live stream on the Oak Academy, which I will of course link in the description as usual. And I'm just going through their Black Lives Matter resources, and it's all just bollocks. It's all just, yeah, the police are racist. Yeah, the UK has race problems. Now go kneel on the floor for 8 minutes so that you know how it feels to kneel on the floor for 8 minutes in silence in memory of George Floyd. Absolutely ridiculous. I mean, honestly, I know it's a meme, but the left really do need better heroes.
And for me personally, I think that it has actually transformed the way that politics are operating now. And I think that that will have implications for the future to come.
I don't think they realise, but they've actually had the whole of the mainstream since 2013. I mean, there was violence going on in 2013. I remember I wasn't even political then, and I still remember those riots. And I used to say to my mate, who was full on with the BLM narrative, just saying, look, there's violence here. I don't agree with it. I think they can do things better. And then he just turns around and says to me that I'm being an apologist for, police murdering black people. Honestly, that was probably one of the first times I got red-pilled.
It depends on who tells it.
Tracy, you hit the nail on the head, child. It depends on who tells it.
I love that. And we won.
Exactly.
Yeah, this is the sinister bit. They seem to have known that they've won. They seem to already know the things I've been telling them, that, they know they don't have substance. They know they don't have symbolism, and that's why they say, oh, how will history tell us in the future? Well, we won, so, in a good fashion. I mean, it's kind of like laughs of relief that they're giving. And honestly, I see it as nothing but sinister. I get the feeling they know that everything they're talking about is bullshit. I really do get that feeling. And yet they seem happy that that is the narrative that history is going to tell, at least in their minds. So as I say, nothing but sinister. That whole video, it's just like, oh, we're struggling, we're oppressed. Social media has helped black women's voices, things like that. And then in the end, it's like, oh yeah, we won, and we're going to tell our history. Fucking amazing. Thanks, BBC. Anyway, we may as well move back to talking about history GCSE, because I want to show you just how bad it is. So the biggest exam board, AQA, has a whole BBC bite-size area for their revision material. And just look at this, right? Topics, the Normans, all right? So they've got a load of things about the Normans, all right? A fair amount, it's not terrible. Okay, what do they have for the Tudors and Stuarts? So for, about 3 centuries of history, their only topic is Elizabeth I. What? And then finally, for modern history, the 20th century, all they've got is Germany and the Cold War. That's it. That's all they have. So the Normans, fairly big topic. I would expect the rest of every century to be that large. Now, if we move on, we will see that by far the biggest topic is Britain, migration, empires, and the people, from around 790 to the present day. And it's all just crap about migration, it'll be like, oh, economics and commerce, religion and ideas, war and government, all right, all stuff that's fairly interesting, I will say. But I don't think it should be the absolute biggest topic for an exam board. Migration really wasn't that huge in Britain. I mean, it's a common factoid that between 1066 and 1993, I think it was, there was less immigration than we've had since 1993, since Prime Minister Tony Blair got in. And yet, it is the largest part of AQA's revision material. And don't worry, we're going to get into some of the juicier parts of this. So, for example, in the topic Migration's Effect on Britain, Religion and Ideas, in the fourth part, I mean, I think the first few parts are about, the empire, Christianity, how it affected all that. But then it gets to the fourth part, which is, 20th century history, so 1950, I guess, onwards. So culture and diversity in 20th century Britain. Britain in the 20th century. During the 20th century, immigration into Britain encouraged the development of diverse cultural experiences and understanding within society. Cultural integration brought music, literature, art, food, and fashion from different parts of the world, particularly from places that had been part of the Empire and then the Commonwealth. And it also impacted things like business and sport. So, alright, this all seems fairly objective. I'm not against them teaching things like this. This is all true. And more importantly, impartial. It's not saying whether this is positive or negative, it is just saying this happened. An example of cultural integration in British society was the introduction of ska and reggae music from Jamaica in the Caribbean. This was a major achievement of Chris Blackwell, who founded a recording company called Island Records in 1958 in Jamaica. In 1962, he returned to England and Island Records became more and more successful. In the 1970s, he brought on Bob Marley and his music to Britain. There was also a greater appreciation of the history and philosophy of other societies around the globe during the 20th century. Originally, there was an interest in these diverse cultures so that Britain could rule them more effectively within the empire. Okay, that's fine. In the later 20th century, the motives changed and many British people realised the benefits of developing a multicultural society that would broaden the experience and meaning of being British. Okay, no. That is a flagrant lie. That is not true at all. If that was true, then Enoch Powell would not have been one of the most popular politicians before he was kicked out of the Tory party. The identities of migrants who came from the West Indies, Africa and Asia were more complex, and the notions of being Black British and Asian British developed in the late 20th century. It's just interesting the way they phrase it. The migrants' identities were more complex, which I don't think is the right way to word it. I think they just mean exotic, because obviously everyone in Britain has, similar identities, or identities that we're all at least used to. Whereas obviously if you come from abroad, you're going to have, just by nature, a different identity. But to say that this is more complex, I mean, the problem I have with this is that it's insinuating that it's better because it's more complex. And I think just the wording in general is awful as it is, but also I don't even think that's true. Just because they're from somewhere else doesn't mean they're better than the British identity. However, the development of a tolerant multicultural Britain has had its opponents. There has been racism in society that has led to open opposition to immigration and also more covert discrimination against Black and Asian people. Bloody hell, you better have a good example of this. There's a more covert discrimination. What the hell do they mean by that? And, open opposition to immigration. They're now conflating opposition to immigration as racism, which, quite frankly, they can get fucked over. This racism was gradually brought under the control of British laws when the 1965 Race Relations Act made racial discrimination illegal, which as a free marketer I do not agree with. However, the achievement of racial equality remains a challenge even in the 21st century. Yes, I'm not bloody surprised. Because it's things like this which get people in the mindset that multiculturalism is the only good way forward, and any opposition to it is racism, which sets off people's intuitions of disgust. Which I'm not against people being disgusted by racism. I'm disgusted by racism. The thing with my intuition is that I apply it equally across all races. People like the BBC and the people pushing for more Black Lives Matter in GCSEs do not have a disgust reaction when they see racism against white people. And I think that's bloody wrong. But man, wait till we get to the juicy part of part 5. Racism and its opponents in Britain. Racist violence in the Notting Hill riots of 1958 was driven by gangs of white youths, known as Teddy Boys, who particularly targeted black men and who were in relationships with white women. Yeah, okay. Notting Hill riots were bad, I agree. The murder in 1959 of Kelso Cochrane, a West Indian carpenter, also in the Notting Hill area, was the first clear example of a racially motivated killing in London. It took till 1959, bloody hell. The man who had led the British fascist movement in the 1930s, Sir Oswald Mosley, was campaigning to become the local Member of Parliament and stirred up racial tension. Kelso's murder provoked an outcry from thousands of local people, black and white, and Mosley was soundly beaten in the elections. So, again, mostly fine, mostly objective stuff at the start of this section. Although, was Sir Oswald Mosley stirring up racial tensions? I don't know what they mean by that. I need an example. Though I am aware that he was the leader of the British Union of Fascists, and it would not surprise me if he was a massive racist, but whatever, I don't care. Moving on to the spicy bit. There were further examples of racist politicians in Britain in the 1960s, so the Smethwick elections in 1964. There was a constituency, an area of voters, in the Midlands where there had been opposition to the arrival of black and Asian families at the time. A Conservative politician, Peter Griffiths, used a racist slogan as part of his election campaign against Labour politician Patrick Gordon Walker. When he defeated Gordon Walker, it was caused shock throughout Britain. It caused shock throughout Britain. The following year, Malcolm X, an African-American Muslim minister and human rights activist, paid a special visit to Smethwick to encourage the black people of the town to stand up for their rights. All right, whatever. Again, what was the racist slogan? Tell me what the racist slogan was. After a quick look through the internet, thank you Google, I have found that the racist slogan was, "If you want an N-word for a neighbour, vote Labour," which I have to say is in low taste, but maybe I'm just more intellectual than the 1964 Peter Griffiths. But obviously it was a successful campaign, because he won. And I mean, this is the thing, left-wingers don't actually like democracy. They just tend to use it as a front for things that they want, whereas more principled people would say, okay, well, they democratically elected a racist, so, you know, enjoy the racism for the next few years. There were plenty of other constituencies where I'm sure racists were not voted in and black people could move to and feel a lot more comfortable in. Don't get me wrong, I know it's not ideal for the black people who've made lives there, but ultimately it's up to their choice. If they can handle the next few years of racism and hopefully get enough people, as Malcolm X apparently did, to vote against that type of thing, then fair enough. That's ideally how a democracy is supposed to work. But either way, I'll say again, that part was fairly objective. But now we get on to the next part, which I do have quite a bit of problems with. Enoch Powell was a politician in the Conservative Party who spoke out against non-white immigration in the late 1960s. From what I remember of Rivers of Blood, it was all immigration, but mainly a focus on non-white immigration because he kept getting letters saying that there were problems with them. He claimed that Britain would suffer racial violence. Well, you know, that was prophetic, wasn't it? Like America had, if the government did not stop non-white immigrants flooding into the country. Again, I think if you told him that London would be majority-minority, then he would probably actually go on a bit more of a crusade. I didn't think he'd think things would get that bad. Taking jobs and causing overcrowding. Well, I mean, again, look at London. He made a major public statement about the issue in 1968 when there was an increase in the arrival of Asian migrants from Kenya and East Africa. Again, they're just outright saying Enoch Powell was a racist, which I don't actually think he was. I think he was just pointing out that there is a problem with this very, very high level of immigration coming from places that are not doing too well when it comes to integration. And again, you know, how many stabbings does it take to make a river of blood? But unlike the previous one in Smethwick, which I think was a bit more blatantly racist, I think there's a lot to talk about that could be rather nuanced with Enoch Powell, but you just can't have the debate. You just can't have it. I remember in 2018, they did a special on the BBC, 50 years after the Rivers of Blood. And again, it was everyone just calling him a racist, basically. And they basically didn't get anyone on to say, look, maybe he has a point. And it's a point that I agree with, though not necessarily in the way he was talking about in those days. In fact, I've done a video on this where you could change literally, I think, 2 sentences in that whole speech, and it'd be, you know, it'd be perfectly classically liberal to say the things that he has said. But alas, no dice when it comes to BBC Bite Size and, the general history syllabus. And this is the syllabus as it is now, by the way. Imagine after they have the Black Lives Matter shake-up. It will be horrible. So, then they go into an example of Claudia Trinidadian. It's not worth it. I mean, you know what it's going to say, don't you? It's just going to say, oh, she was great. She look at all the things she did in her lives. I mean, this is the thing. For those two last politicians, they just focused on the one bit that was racist. And I will go through this. So with Claudia Jones, it's a whole biography. Basically, it bullet points from 1915 to 1964. And then for some reason it mentions that she was buried next to Karl Marx. Which really, I would not see that as a good thing. But this blatant one-sided teaching of history, which it is, by the way, though to be fair, it's nowhere near as bad than what I was expecting, but this teaching of history is clearly one-sided, and it's still not good enough for Black Lives Matter. And this is the thing that I think a lot of people need to learn. It's never gonna be good enough. Stop trying to appease them. It needs to be fought tooth and nail. When they push the bayonet into topics like this, let them meet steel, not squidgy bits that they can keep pushing through. And unfortunately with the Tories of everything like this, they always meet squidgy bits and keep pushing through. That needs a change, and that's why I will probably be voting the Heritage Party, or maybe Reclaim if Lawrence Fox does good enough, but probably not. And also Nigel Farage's new party. I think that would be a good choice as well. Hopefully we'll have 3 alternatives to the Tories next year, because the country really bloody needs it. Because shit like this needs to be pushed against. We need to push the way we teach history way back to the 1950s and try and evolve it from there. Because what we have at the moment is so one-sided and such a Marxist and materialist vision of history that it's just not worth teaching kids anymore. People don't know their own history. And I think that is in desperate need for change. But luckily, there are plenty of other resources out there to give you a good objective look at these points in history. It's a damn shame we don't do it for the kids. But that's everything I had for you today. So, as usual, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.